how's it going? This is Tex. Hope you're having an awesome day. This is a slight continuation of a previous subject. The video before me, we talked about one of the problems that happens when you have a level of paranoid ideation, and you can watch the video on just that if you want to, and or not, or a misunderstanding of gaslighting and mansplaining, and how it's very easy to get things convoluted and misunderstood. And when someone may just be talking to you, explaining themselves in their head, processing out loud, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're trying to talk down to you. That may be their way of doing it. A lot of it has to do with their tone of voice and how they're doing and the words that they use that make it condescending or not. The same way with gaslighting. Gaslighting is insidious. They're trying to manipulate your mind and convince you that reality as you see it is not reality. That's different than simply disagreeing with you. Now, where does this lead into the next topic? So there have been, I would say, over the last year, a reasonable number of individuals that come to me, and I'm going to give you the typicals. It's typically men, not always, but typically men who are being told by their partner that you are a narcissist and you need therapy. Now, I might agree that they need therapy. Where it gets sticky is the whole, you're a narcissist. Now, I will go to the DSM, and I want to pull that out first, DSM-5. And when you go and pull up narcissistic personality disorder, okay, as with all the personality disorders, it's a pervasive pattern of grandiosity, need for admiration, lack of empathy, okay? And then you have criteria, and you have to have 5 or more of the following criteria: a grandiose sense of self, self-importance, preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success or power, believes that they are special or unique and can only be understood or associate with the same, requires excessive admiration, has a sense of entitlement, is interpersonally exploitative, lacks empathy, is often envious of others or believes others are envious of them, and shows arrogant or haughty behaviors or attitudes. So I'm fixed to say something that's going to shake a lot of people. It may piss a few people off. It may make some people happy, but you know what? It won't be the first time in my life. And I also think that there is a growing body of evidence to support what I'm saying, and I'm starting to see other people think along the same routes. There are individuals who have Asperger's, autism spectrum disorder, who may be floating along the lines of some of those characteristics you've seen. Some of the typical things you see in people with autism may be difficulty with empathy or difficulty understanding others and others' motives and others' ways of doing things. Now, there's the subtle difference, though. It's a difference between not understanding the social cues or even placing importance on how someone else is responding or what's going on, and not giving a damn and wanting your own way and shoving over people. And it takes some insight sometimes to see the difference. I've had several individuals that come to me and said, my partner says I'm a narcissist and I need therapy. When I ask them what happens, some of them have done some mean things. They boss the other person around. They tell them what to do. They're controlling. They know what they need to tell the other person to accomplish what they want, even if it's making the other person feel bad, even if it borderlines on what I would call the behaviors that you would see that would be condescending, and they're sliding into a gaslighting situation, talking down to the other person, stuff like that. But the question is when they came to me, they felt bad about what they were doing. I'm not saying that a narcissist can't feel bad. Typically, they have difficulty with empathy. And most narcissists want what they want, really don't care about what you want as long as they get what they want. And then you have the other stuff, the need for admiration and everything else. If you take someone who has a high level of understanding of a particular area, they're an expert, they expect to be treated like experts, and they just happen to also be so there's that squeaking again. I think that's on cue. All right, let me fix that. Who knows? That might get edited out. Who knows? Getting back on track. Individuals with the types of things you'd see in somebody with autism. And this is, and I have to thank a lot of people for helping me. And I also have to be very careful. I don't want to use words that are offensive to anybody. It's just that a lot of the terms are old terms and it's easy for people to understand. And one of the terms I used to have was high functioning autism. And some people with autism or in the neurodivergent community want to shy away from that, pick other words. It's okay. I get it. I'm trying to get a level of understanding here, though, that it's somebody who may have problems that put them in the spectrum. And then they have other areas where they exceed in, and maybe they even exceed in them unbelievably high. They're extremely, extremely good at a job. High level of understanding of certain engineering concepts or science concepts or computer concepts or some field, and usually technical fields, that they are so high up in that not only do other people come to them for advice, they look up to them, so they get what would look like the benefits that somebody who had narcissistic personality disorder would want, but they actually earned that stuff. They don't just expect it. And they're also very hard on themselves. And many of them might be very controlling, because controlling in this area or in their life relieves anxiety and tension. So it's possible to see somebody who is this kind of person who tries to control their surroundings to relieve their anxiety. Because again, many people with autism or the spectrum disorder or Asperger's, whatever you want to call it, or neurodivergent, by controlling their environment, they relieve the anxiety that they have high levels of. But without sometimes the empathy to understand that the way they're controlling it might hurt other people. In fact, they go through that, oh, well, I'm doing it and it's for their own good, and this is the way it is, and everything will be easier. And that may not be the case. And it may be very upsetting to the person who's getting it done to them. So sometimes people will find themselves in that situation where somebody who is doing these things are doing it to them, and then they feel that that person is narcissistic. In fact, then we get into what I consider a high dynamic, high level of the drama triangle, because the individual who's having this done to them falls into the victim role, that victim role of the drama triangle, where they're down here feeling they are being victimized by someone who's the persecutor. And so then they react against that. And the way they do it is by demanding that person be a persecutor. What do I mean by that? If you are someone who's in the victim role in this situation, you may demand that the other person take accountability for their actions by naming and labeling themselves as a narcissist, when that may not be the case. That's why I say you really need to seek out another's opinion. You really need to go to a professional, because there's a difference. If you're trying to treat, and this is where it really, I had a conversation with one person and they said, well, what difference does it make? These are my behaviors and I just want to change them. And I said, the difference between whether or not you're being narcissistic and whether you are someone who doesn't understand your behaviors because of a certain level of Asperger's or autism or whatever you want to call it, the approach I use will be slightly different, because typically the people that are on the narcissistic side, they also may not understand what they're doing, or they may not care. And you have to get them to a level of where they see a value in change that is such that they might be able to have at least a minor level of empathy for the person that they're doing it to. It's difficult. Someone with Asperger's, though, may not really have understood what they did in the sense that they don't want to hurt. In fact, now they feel extreme shame and guilt at what they've done. And it makes it very easy for them then to be turned into the blunt end of somebody else's abuse. In other words, the person who for all these years put up with it is now on the top side. They have become the persecutor. They are now pushing this person into being a victim, saying, you were horrible, you did bad, you need to fix it, you've got all these issues. And again, the difference between the two, in both cases, you do have to see that the person who you pushed into victimhood earlier by being narcissistic or by being someone who has this high level of function that doesn't understand your behaviors, that person has now pushed their way up to be the one in charge and to punish you and abuse you for what you did to them. And it's a case of a cycle of abuse now. You abuse, they abuse to get you back for your abuse. You get mad, and it goes on. In fact, the person who has a high level of ability and good strengths and qualities, but also has a problem with understanding, might now understand enough to realize they've done something horrible and then feel bad and cave in on themselves. So now it's about helping that person understand that they can regain control of their lives by changing and becoming a better person. The person over here, it's about sometimes helping them figure out how it's best for them and what they get out of it. And I find I don't have to do that with someone who's not narcissistic, but over on this side, who's dealing with the problems of just trying to understand and wanting to truly be a better person. And that's where the crux of that comes in. It gets very difficult because more often than not, the person that has had this happen over the years may or may not be a personality disorder themselves. And that's where it gets really complicated. Because if the person who is their partner has a personality disorder, now it's part of their personality disorder to keep people within that drama triangle and not change things totally. In other words, that person who for all these years has been down on the bottom end of this abuse that they feel will now want to make themselves into a situation where they're martyred and stuck there and can't move to get a better relationship. They want to eternally punish the other person. And then you get into that whole dyad of punishment and cycles of problems that you can't get out of. So that's where both people really need to pull out and get therapy, as well as the couple needs marriage or family therapy to help them hold together and change. So it's coming from two different levels. So circling back to what I said, the individual who feels they're being gaslit feels that way because they feel like the other person disagrees with them, when the other person might not be trying to manipulate you. They just see it the way they see it, and there ain't no change. In other words, both of these individuals have high levels of what's called psychic equivalence, which is problems with seeing things differently and realizing there is variance in how other people think. Because it's all about this theory of mind, thinking about how the other person thinks and how the other person thinks about you. And that is a very hard thing for people to do who have a personality disorder. It's also a very hard thing for people to do who are experiencing autism or Asperger's and similar types of neurodivergence. They have a hard time understanding what other people think. And this gets complicated. Okay. So I kind of hope you got the gist of that. If you want more, let me know. If you want me to go into it, great. Let it sink in and think about it, because it will make sense at some level. In all cases, personality disorders, ADHD, autism, you have neurophysiology, you have brain patterns and things and physiological things that are different, and they're causing a difference. That's why I believe what they say when they say personality disorders are inherited And I also look in families that have personality disorders, and they also have a lot of ADHD, and they have a little bit of autistic-like behaviors in it. Makes perfect sense to me. Okay. So I'll talk to you more later. I hope you have an awesome day. Thank you very much for joining me. And I'm Tex, and y'all have a great day. Okay. Bye-bye.